What's up, Trunk Slayers? It's Monday. That means it's Spicy Monday time. And today we're going to continue a conversation from this past weekend that Kyle Christensen wrote me into, which is escalations. We're going to talk a little bit about why the way MSPs handle escalations is pretty much completely wrong and upside down, but also how we got to this point, and a few things you can do to fix it. And if you want to hear more about this, especially if you're an employee at an MSP, the talk I'll be giving at MSP GeekCon on focusing on what you're good at, operationalizing no, a lot of that talk is going to be how you're going to handle pushing these escalations back down to your teammates. So let's talk a little bit about the problem statement here. So in the IT space in general, we have this thing where we tend to have levels. And this is born from the slightly older archetype, any bastard operators from hell fans here, of different departments within the IT department. So you might have a networking division, a printing division, a change control division, a server storage provisioning division, et cetera, et cetera. And in the ye olden times, and is also much the case in most corporate IT now, individual departments have very narrow accountability and authority scopes, and generally only have the permission to do things within the authority and accountability scope of their department. And for some reason, we took the naming scheme from that and brought it with us to MSP, but didn't bring the rest of it. So at an MSP, we still have this idea of levels, like a tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, but we mean that to be knowledge and capability, not specific accountability and authority scope based on the systems they manage. And the challenge with everything I just said is largely the way MSPs approach, even mature MSPs approach escalations, is they approach escalations from the structured corporate help desk standpoint, which doesn't work if you don't have individual structured gated teams that have very niche responsibilities and authority. It doesn't work when you need everyone on your team to be a generalist. So we end up having a lot of failed escalations at MSPs that result in what are effectively more of a punt of somebody saying, this is not my problem anymore, and they punt it to another team. Who knows what happens in between? Or am I right, MSP owners? How many times has the in-between broken down and embarrassed you in front of a client? And then eventually one of our magical, mysterious T3s wearing their wizard hat up in their wizard tower mysteriously solves the problem, and no one's the better until the process repeats. We need to stop doing that because that's not good, and it's not what good looks like. And anybody who's listening to this video right now who's sitting there and being like, well, at my MSP, we have great escalation metrics. We escalate this percentage every week, and our escalation note policy is this, and blah, 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 blah. It's not anything you should really be proud of because you're focusing on the wrong elements of being happy about escalations to begin with. So let's get into it. So in that corporate IT structure, which we are born of, so I understand where this came from, generally escalations are going to be role or access based. Either I am not allowed to touch that other department's piece of equipment, or I do not have permission or authority to interact with it. And we see this a lot. If I have a printer I want to add to the network, I might need to escalate my ticket to the network team to go provision the IP and the share for me to attach the printer to, and vice versa. And this is how that industry works. And we might also have escalation based on tightly controlled tiers and responsibilities. We've seen this if we've ever called into any call center for any line of business ever. Great example is, you ever called your bank, like the corporate nut line, talk to a person and they've said they have to transfer you to another department? That's an escalation. And it's usually not because the agent talking to you doesn't want to help you, can't help you, or doesn't even know how to help you. They just literally don't have the permission to help you with that thing, and they have to move it over. Generally speaking, that's not how MSPs work. And even if you're a very mature and very large MSP, and I came from a very mature and very large MSP, that's still not how it works, because we don't do that, because that's not our business model. And that's an important element to remember. At an MSP, time equals money. We need to get these tasks done by as few people in the shortest amount of time, because we're going against an all-you-can-eat agreement, such that we can actually turn a profit. An internal corporate help desk doesn't have to worry about that. Yeah, they can't waste time, but a ticket could change hands 5 times, have 5 different people touch it, and could take longer aggregate to get done as long as the results are repeatedly arrived at. It's similar, but it's a really different objective and a different modality, which is why the corporate style of escalation that we've all adopted does not work at MSPs. So let's talk a little bit about why MSP escalations happen. So most MSPs have a tiering system like we talked about, tier 1, 2, 3. First of all, it means different things at every MSP, which is a challenge, but generally speaking, T1s are our least expensive employees that have the least amount of knowledge, the least amount of authority. Tier 2s are our more seasoned tier 1s, and then tier 3s tend to be our people that kind of know how to do a little bit of everything. And at the average MSP, and we will come back to this later, so put a pin in your brain, most T3s are doing our projects, internal tool admin, yada, yada, yada. They're the owner's safety blanket. And we'll talk more about that in a minute. And so usually an escalation at MSP comes down to this is taking too long, somebody doesn't have enough knowledge, or they don't have the right access, so we're going to escalate it. And in certain rare cases, it also comes down to there's only a certain person on the team that can appease this client, so we're going to escalate the ticket for that reason, which is something else, and we'll talk about that as well. So in a corporate help desk, not really a big deal. If I'm the printer guy and I need a network share provisioned, that literally is not my problem. So I follow my escalation process, I put all my notes in, I make sure I do it within, the time window that's stipulated in the SOP. I click the button, fucking job's done. Good job, Dean. I'm going to go walk around and change toner for the rest of the day. That ticket is literally not my problem. It's going to hit the network team's queue. They're going to do whatever they got to do. And eventually, when it's ready, it'll get back to me and I'll have a ping in my inbox and I'll go work on it. I can punt. In fact, that whole system is designed for me to punt. All right. But in an MSP, we need to think about that same thing. A ticket comes in where a T1 technician is assigned to add a printer. They go to add a printer and realize they don't know how or don't think they have access to add the printer. So they escalate that ticket to the T3. The T3 who's on site all day working, installing a project. The T3 comes back later. They do whatever they got to do, which probably was pretty stupid and trivial because MSPs have a lot of control and authority. And then maybe the client gets an update because that T3 generally doesn't work help desk tickets. So they're in a totally different modality of interaction. And then the printer's installed and it's probably not really documented what was done, where to find that info. That T1 is never really educated on what they could have done or what they got wrong or what was right in front of them. And we move forward till the next time it happens. And you may be saying to me, all right, fair enough, but where's the harm in that? And well, I would say to that, are you an MSP that's been in business for more than a decade and you're still less than $2 million in revenue and you're the owner and you're scratching your head and you're thinking, but I do everything right. Why am I not growing? Because of shit like this, dude. This is why. Because of stuff like this. Where's the harm in it? There's a ton of harm in it. So your MSP fundamentally cannot run with a punting or abdication system because you don't have discrete roles and responsibilities on your technical team, and you don't have all the time in the world to get stuff done. You need that T1 tech to be able to provision that printer in the first 30 minutes appropriately, effectively, and succinctly, communicate that back to the client and wrap up that ticket so they can get on to the next one, or you are losing money and you are not making your clients happy, which means they are not recommending more clients to you, so your business is going nowhere. That behavior would be totally fine at a corporate help desk. It's not fine at your MSP. And punting and abdication is only creating more work for your already very, very, very overburdened safety blanket employee, and it's doing nothing to increase the value that your lower level employees add. So the problem goes a little bit deeper than that. It starts to set up a culture at your MSP where your lower level employees can start to have an attitude of, I can't, it's not my problem. And we already know imposter syndrome is huge in this space, and you're just pouring fuel on that fire. And how many of you have had a lower level employee come to you out of nowhere suddenly with a grandiose dream of a role they want and requisite compensation, only for you at that moment to, maybe not literally, but laugh at them, to be like, there's no way I'd let you do that. You're not capable of doing it. And then that employee in that moment is not happy with that, and they're going to leave. And the total cost of acquiring a new staff member is very high. And wow, the entire time, if you had been taking all of those tickets they punted and using those as a training opportunity to make them better at their jobs, you know what probably would have happened? First of all, that T1 would have a way better sense of what they actually can do and what their value is. But also, there's a good chance they actually would have learned the skills to move into that new role or job that they want from you. Wow, that's amazing. So let's talk about that a little bit more. At your MSP, as we said, you likely have at least one, depending on your size, more than one people that, if you're the owner, they're your safety blankets. These are typically our longest tenured employees. They know how to do a little bit of everything. They are the people we trust to kind of keep our business running in the background. Generally, they know the most about our internal tools and systems. In fact, they may be in a position now where they know more about your client base than you do. And so there's a fair amount of both fear and comfort that come from having these employees. And we tend to reward them with increased responsibility and titles because for some reason in small business owner land, we think that's a way to compliment people. And that's a separate video. But no, it's not. So you got this person who they're probably doing your projects. They're probably doing your move ad changes. They're probably doing your change control. They are probably your internal tool admin. They're probably your head of proactive, making sure all that stuff's working. They probably are basically a de facto ad hoc manager, coach, and general sort of TAM and account manager when necessary because they just know everything. They've been there forever. And so that's a lot, and that's very stressful. And that's a lot of responsibility. And I know if you ask these employees, you know, are you stressed out? There's a good chance they might say yes, but they're going to downplay it because they like you. That's why they've worked there for so long, because they like you. And just to rip that Band-Aid off quickly, if you have an employee that likes you and likes working for you, they are going to fib or misrepresent the reality of their working situation a little bit. Like, everybody understands that, right? Like, just like you would lie a little bit to someone you love, like, yes, I'm happy to be doing this, as long as it's not too off-putting. Like, we all do that. Your high-level employees that have been working for you for a long time also do that. So don't go ask them and take it at face value that my job's great, I love all these roles, boss. They don't. They're just doing them because they're happy to help you because they like working for you. And you add to all of that they have to stop all the shit they're doing to go reset a password or fix a printer because some jackass on the T1 team couldn't use Google. Is that the best thing to be doing? And keep in mind that these T3 people generally are not working help desk tickets, especially as your MSP starts to get above like 5 or 6 employees. So they're probably not that great anymore at following your help desk process, even if they are de facto the best relationship stakeholders with the clients. They're probably not very good at doing help desk tickets. So they're probably going to fix that printer and then not remember to tell anybody they did it. And tell me that hasn't happened to you. What I want you to start doing is to start looking at every opportunity where a low-level employee escalates a ticket. And remember that they're escalating it for a few reasons. I don't know how to do it, I don't have access to do it, or I don't think I'm allowed to do it. And those 3 things you can fix. So the I don't think I'm allowed to do it one, that's an authority scope issue. And we're not going to cover that in the subject of this video, but that's a very complex issue to have, and I'm hoping that's not most of your escalations. It's probably your cross-departmental escalation. So the other 2 of those we're going to focus on. I don't know how to do it, and I don't have access to do it. So if you don't have access to do something, that's either an oversight, or it was intentional, or you do have access and you don't realize it. And so if it's an oversight, and you escalate this to your T3, and your T3 is able to identify, oh, you should have had access to do that. I've added the access for you. The ticket is yours again. Please work the ticket. See how simple that was? On the other hand, if they have access but don't know it, what a great training example and dramatic foreshadowing. We're going to come back to that in a minute to explain to them, in fact, you do have access and it's here. And here's the SOP you should have followed. And if that SOP is missing, that's when you have your T3 write the rough draft of that SOP in the future so that it can exist, so people know how to access whatever, IT glue keeper, wherever the password was. And last but not least, it may be intentional. And in those cases, while rare, that can't happen. And that may actually be a case for a true escalation to the T3, but we're going to also talk about in a minute about coming back to the mentality around that. So put a pin in that. The other reason is I don't know how to. And generally, I don't know how to falls into two categories. They really don't know how to, or they absolutely know how to and they don't have any confidence. So guess what'll fix both of those things? Your T3 employee having enough time freed up in their schedule from all those hats to actually, while the iron is hot, sit down and do the escalation with the T1 employee together. Work the ticket together. Hey, here's how we do this. Here's the knowledge base. Here's the Google search. These are the steps you follow. You are absolutely capable of doing this. I am not going to do this ticket for you the next time it comes up. I know you know how to do it, and you are going to teach the next person how to do it. The thing is, if you let your T1 and T2 team punt or abdicate, even if you have an amazing escalation process that's tightly followed, you're not benefiting the MSP. Because remember, at the MSP, we need things to be done quickly and by the least expensive employee. And this could be a whole separate video. There are a number of elements to this, though. And those elements are all very, very easy to do, but yet nobody makes a habit of doing them. And instead, we just put in a solution to consistently band-aid the problem, and we pat ourselves on the back for how good our band-aid is. There's no reason for anybody to be getting cut in the first place. First of all, MSP owners, side tangent. If everything at your MSP is not being designed and sold from the ground up to ultimately be supportable by your lowest level employees, you are a failure. You are failing. You are doing it wrong, and there's no nice way to say it. In fact, I would go so far to say that you're a bit of an idiot and you probably have an ego issue. Everything in your MSP needs to be engineered so that the lowest common denominator can execute on it repeatedly. There are a variety of ways to get to this. Stack alignment is one of them. Your knowledge base is another one of those things. Your internal policies and procedures are one. How you have your ticketing system set up is one. How you're, handling triage. All of these elements should all be pointing back to the least expensive resource should be able to deliver a repeatable process that gets it resolved quickly so I can make a profit and my clients are happy. And if that's not the case, and your T2s and your T3s are always running around putting out fires, you are not doing this right. And having weird, complex shit all over your environments that's poorly documented, that's not cool or the mark of somebody who's great at tech. That's the mark of an asshole. So just so we're all on that page, I understand that is a more nuanced situation than 2 minutes of sarcastically talking to you in a video. But in the context of escalations, if the T1s getting tickets are genuinely getting tickets that they are not positioned to be effective at, so either tickets that have no business being worked by a T1 are being assigned to T1s first, so they're forced to escalate. Talk to me about my issues with an FCR team. Or they have everything they need, but it's not all in one place and it's not made clear. You need to fix that because you're creating excess pain and you're reducing profitability and no one's learning and no one's getting better at anything and no one's growing, no one's doing any better. At triage, you should be able to identify with probably like 90% certainty if a ticket is appropriate for your T1 team. Appropriate meaning that the average T1 member has all of the knowledge, access, and materials necessary to execute that ticket. I don't mean variables like is the end user a pain in the ass or likes to talk. I mean about the parts you can control. You should have a very good handle on that. And so first of all, the T1 should only be being fed things that T1s can work, so they shouldn't have to go through an escalation process. I know that sounds like it's really straightforward, but a lot of people miss that. Assuming you have focused on that, and do not blame your tools. I've never found a ticketing system that does not have the ability to arrive at this. That's a you problem and your lack of knowledge, not a tool problem if you're not doing that with your tool set. All right, so wrapping up, why would you want to change this at all? Because it's going to do a few things. The first thing is if all of your lower level employees that are constantly punting away and saying it's not my problem are suddenly being told, no, in fact, it is your problem and you have everything you need to solve it, they're going to get better at solving problems, which means that we need our T1s to be, intelligent and we need them to be generalists. They're going to be both of those things, which means your entire T1 team is going to always be growing and improving. Put a pin in that. And now on the flip side, if your T3 has some time freed up so they can actually go in and meaningfully help teach your T1s, you know what that's going to do? It's going to cause your T3s to like your T1s more. It's this thing called reciprocity. By doing all these small favors and helping the T1s get through their day rather than just taking on their workload, your T3s are going to feel good, and they're going to feel good about the T1s, which means they're going to engage with them more, not just in this context. And what's that going to help you with? It means that passively, your highest level employees are going to be top grading your entire lower level staff. They are going to be identifying the best T1s and T2s. They're going to start spending more time and investing in them, training them, which means your entire aggregate team is going to move towards more A players, which means that when it comes time to give out raises and bonuses and compensation, everybody is going to be in a better place, and your clients will be a hell of a lot happier. And it's way easier to train up internal people than it is to try and bring them out externally. Everybody wins in this model rather than abdicating. So, end of the day, what do I want everybody to do? If you are a T1, Tier 2, somebody that normally has to escalate, I want you to start making an effort to not just punt tickets up to other people and to really critically think about, do I actually have the knowledge and tools available to me to execute on this? And if you're punting because you've hit whatever, you got to escalate after 45 minutes, that timer, I want you to think critically about the fact that if you had a little more training, could you have reasonably solved it sooner? Because odds are the answer is yes. If you're that T3 employee or that T2 employee that's doing the escalations, I want you to start saying no. And I don't mean cross your arms and say, no, I'm not going to do escalations. I want you to look at every escalation that comes in and think critically and say, does this really need me? Or could the person who escalated it to me have resolved it and they just don't realize it? And whenever possible, I want you to try and say to them, here's the KB you are missing. Here is the knowledge base article. Here's the Google, whatever. Take this ticket back, spend 30 minutes with this new piece of information, see if you can't get it done, and start trying to push those escalations back down to the people who should be able to work the tickets. If you're a business owner, I want you to do two things for me. I want you to free up some time off that T3 schedule, because just like you had to wear many hats, and there's probably stuff that you're doing now more as a force of habit than it actually requires you, that T3 is probably doing stuff that they don't actually have to be doing anymore. They could be passed off to someone else. And if you could free up 30 to 40% capacity on their schedule, that would do a world of difference to helping them make your team better. And I also want you to start pushing that T3 team member to take more time actively at their discretion, but you are going to need to push them to go in and take meaningful opportunities to train and upskill the team members who are escalating stuff to them. Because there's very little in a high-functioning MSP that genuinely should need escalation. Because most of what we do really isn't that fancy or complex or difficult to understand. It's going to make your MSP better. Your entire team's going to upskill. Your clients are going to notice as you start doing, and this will take a while. You got to keep at this for 6 months to a year, but your clients are going to notice stuff starts getting resolved a little bit quicker and a little bit more efficiently. And everybody's a little more pleasant when they're doing it, because the entire team becomes more capable and has a greater sense of ownership of the client relationship and every individual ticket. And your clients absolutely will pick up on that, and they will refer you to other people if you ask them to do that as a result of doing this. Have a great Monday. Stop punting your escalations. Stop patting yourself on the back if you think that the number of escalations you're pushing through the system is something to be proud of. It really isn't. Not in an MSP, at least. We're for profit, not for revenue.